are watching the Blueprint Radio Show with DJ Miss Hennessy.
By a thread we hang on suspense, but it can all erupt so immense. Yeah, butterflies in the gut, what's next? Yeah, we keep the energy free, not dense. Diplomatic, but we don't slip on the fence. I speak in prose and not no past tense. The youth often ask, what the fuck's this ish? Yeah, they rear up and they pull up a fist. They wanna uppercut you, buck it up, French kiss. Disrespect your whole set and dismiss. Walk with Lady Luck and they strut like this. Some don't care much, someone try switch. Some get rough, some cry like a bitch. When the truth hits, there's no pretend or defense. We all just need a little more confidence. Got me in a chokehold, got me in a chokehold. You gotta let me go, you gotta let me go, go. Hey, if they got you in a chokehold, got you in a chokehold, you gotta let them know. You gotta let them go. Hey, yeah, hey. Stakes is high. Yeah. The wicked always try strike the innocent, cause the wicked always live life in regret. Do you have a solid mind or a mind like cement? Can you find your way through the bribes and the bets? The stakes is high, like De La Soul said. I'm sorry to say it, but hip-hop's not dead. Mind you, I know that's not what you meant, but it's our golden years on which we lament. Some stay straight, some stay bent. Some move with motion, some piss in the wind. Some detonate and devastate and then debate to aggregate, to congregate and infiltrate the interstate and fabricate divine great. Higher place to which we gravitate. When we meditate, we stay free of hate. Hey, it's no coincidence we feel the opulence. We all just need a little more confidence. Got me in a chokehold, got me in a chokehold. You gotta let me go, you gotta let me go. Hey, if they got you in a chokehold, got you in a chokehold, you gotta let them know. You gotta let them go. Hey, see them weeds, I see them go. Where I go, I see them weeds, they choke them all. Where they go, I see them weeds, I see them go. Where I go, I see them weeds, they choke them all. Where they go.
ready. I'm ready. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready. Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready, I'm 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 ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exclusive interview right here on Miss Hennessy TV. I am your host, Maxine Jones, aka Miss Hennessy, and you know what I enjoy greatly in life is to be able to speak to people that are not only incredible creatives, but creating the necessities that we need to continue our hip hop evolution, and especially our hip hop evolution right here in Australia. This man really needs no introduction. We had a chuckle beforehand when I asked him what he wanted me to introduce him as. He goes by many names. Legendary would be one, pioneer would be another. I don't know if that's too cringe. Luminary, we discovered, was another one that he was also introduced at. But I think I'll just introduce him as Nfa. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be part of your platform and chatting with you. It's great.
Thank you. It's so nice to finally connect with you. Like I said, we've known each other for many years. We've obviously, part of this huge organism of hip hop here in Australia. But yeah, just ebbing and flowing as this industry does. But really grateful to be able to speak to you tonight. Obviously, the release of your incredible new documentary, Burn Gently. Which was released a couple of weeks ago, is very exciting and something that is much needed in our ever-growing community. Congratulations on this feat. How do you feel?
Oh, tired. Good. No, pleased that it's happened. Pleased that we managed to complete it, given how small our team is. Pleased to be part of it. It all came together quite strangely, and I definitely can't take credit for it. It's very much a team effort.
Absolutely. Obviously, and I know I mentioned to you briefly before that there's always talk about, documentaries being made, being created, or I want to make a documentary, and it's great. I mean, I'm a huge lover of documentaries, but I know that much like a writer, like myself, people want to write books, but it takes a lot to be able to compile that. And especially when you're looking at, something as large as the hip hop sort of entity, not on a global scale, but our own hip hop community here is massive, and it's got roots. And the people, I think what sort of struck me with this particular doco was the focus on obviously the artists that are involved. Now, I've happened to come across a really, really great write-up here from Cinema Australia online about it. And it says the project boasts some of the biggest names in Australian hip hop, including 360, Suffer from the Hilltop Hoods, Bliss and SO, Thundamentals, Alfresh the Lion, Mantra, Matt O'Keen, MC Trey, Michelle Grace Hunter, Baker Boy, Def Wish Cast, Mirror, Genesis Owusu, Sampa the Great, Draft, Earth Boy, and many, many more. Now, these are names that a lot of people will know, and some of the newer sort of kids into the the industry won't know. Can I ask how that list came to be on this particular?
Yeah. Don't forget Rosano of Sounds Unlimited and West Side Posse, and don't forget Death Wish Cast. The list came to be basically Ant or Sensible Antics, the production team of Ant and Tino, or Antics and Tino. We were hanging out for various reasons. Ant had asked to help out with some projects I was doing, and I was like, "Yeah, man, let's get involved." We met because he asked me to do part of like a hip hop trivia night, which led on to more things. And we'd hang out quite often, and we'd chat. And I'd end up just telling him stories. I've been telling him stories about the journey and history, and he wanted to talk to me about what I was doing, which led into a series of interviews that he was doing for the music.com called Rhyme Time or Prime Time, Rhyme Time. And as the stories went on, he's like, "Man, we should start documenting these. We could make a doco about Nfa." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't really want to make a doco about me. I don't know about that." Happy to help be a part of something. And that led to conversations. And so initially it was around the people who had affected my journey within Australian landscape. So and because if you start thinking about everybody as big as it is, we can't talk to everybody because everyone would get about 4 seconds and would be on to the next person. Just be like flash video. It'd be like the Keys to the Kingdom video by the Hoods. It would just be a second of everybody. So for example, Rosano from Sounds Unlimited, he had an effect on me because when I was about 14 years old, I performed. I had a group with my brother, and we did original music. We performed a set at the Birds with Superdrome, and Rosano was playing with his band, and we did the support. And I met him, and he was just a really cool guy, really nice guy, like extremely nice person that I looked up to suddenly afterwards. Like, wow, you can be like on stage and killing it and be really nice and polite afterwards. That's cool to see.
Yeah.
He doesn't know he had that effect on me. Years later, we met. I told him that, and he tripped out because he was like, "Oh, I remember that kid. I didn't know that kid grew up to be you. That's nuts." And so from that to Death Wish to working on songs with Draft to seeing Bliss and SO coming up back in the day to being in ciphers and battles with 360, never against them, but just in them. There's this whole journey, and also to the hoods doing supports for 1200 Techniques, to watching them blow up. It's very organic and it's very relationship based, I guess. Not like picking relationships, but you build relationships, and so you sort of have access to the relationships. You have access to those people. I'm blessed that I can text any of them and call them anytime. I generally don't. I leave people alone, but that was kind of the step. And it was like, well, I had all these other people I wanted to talk to as well, and who I thought were wonderful and integral. But Ant, thankfully, also putting a sort of director's cap on, was like, yeah, but we can't talk to everyone. And some of the people you're talking about, people have never heard their music. They haven't reached that sort of scope. So we have to consider all that. So we had to narrow it. I started thinking about certain B-boys and graffiti artists and battle MCs. And it's like, hang on, we're going too wide. We can't fit this. So we had to keep bringing it back. And even as it is, it ended up nearly 2 hours. And that was really trying to hone it in. It would have been probably better to be like, just a 60-minute thing. But it is what it is, because the scene and the journey is, very large. And also with the artists we focused on. There's some newer, more contemporary artists for sure. But there's so many more we wanted who also just weren't available, weren't really sure. You know, it's like, why isn't? And it's like they didn't want. You know,
Absolutely.
But I figure if we can create a documentary that's made like properly, not like a bit of a uni thing that's okay and just a thing, but something that's quite solid. It's not going to be perfect because we're not movie makers, but quite solid. Then that sets something up for someone else to come through and make something better, or for us to potentially do it, or someone else. The next step, next generation, to move on. But I just sort of wanted to create a bit of a cementing place for people who aren't part of the culture to get a sense of what hip hop thinks about so-called Australia and the industry. I mean, I know what John Farnham thinks. I know what rock and roll thinks. I know what everyone else thinks. I know what a lot of my, you know, some of my favorite artists, Australian artists like Nick Cave think, but we don't know what hip hop thinks. So we wanted to share that. And I thought these people were a great choice of people to get to speak to and get ideas and discussions and knowledge from.
Oh, look, I think you've packaged it so well, even in how you've sort of answered that, because it is such a mammoth task, right? And again, you've got relationships and connections with so many people, but not everybody can be in the same project at the same time, like you said. And a lot of the time, people, they're just that glare of, oh my God, documentary can be quite a serious, weighted, sort of word. For a lot of people and for a lot of creatives, that probably would have been, oh my God, no, not yet. But I also think to what you've said in terms of not wanting to make it like a uni kind of thing, like it is. I mean, I'm no, filmographer, documentarian, but I am a lover of them. It is polished. It's sharp. It is that foundation for you guys to, whether you are going to build on it with any future projects, or I think it kind of sets that benchmark, man. So congratulations to yourself and Ant. It is.
I appreciate it. Well, big shout out to Johnny Nanas from Hideaway Productions on the DOP and editing, the amount of time and hours he spent. And it's funny because through the film, there's different qualities of filming depending on where he was at. Like as we went, he got better. There's one or two interviews we had to do via Zoom, which was kind of annoying because we really wanted to set every shot up nice. But, with the time that shall not be said, that strange 2 years, it was impossible. But Johnny, big shout outs to Johnny. He's done so much work.
Yeah, man. And, even like you've just said, thinking logistically of those 2 years that, really affected everybody's lives. I mean, creatively, God, what we had to do, I really think, and I always say this, if you didn't know how to hustle before that, you should know how to hustle now, especially in the entertainment world, because it really taught you what to make do with being away from so much. But how long, I mean, obviously this was the first time for you entering into a creative space like this to make documentary. So how did you initially get into it? I mean, with obviously, well, I'm going to learn along the way, or did you have your own way of how you envisaged it to go?
To be honest, I'll be totally honest. It's the same way I made my first ever album. We had no idea what we were doing. We just wanted to make a thing and knew how to talk, knew how to think, knew how to point a camera, just like I could write a rhyme. My friends could kind of make a beat. We recorded, we made songs. To be honest, it was a bit like that, but every like rap crew needs someone who actually knows how to kind of do something properly. And so we had Johnny who could actually film and get audio decently. And then as it went, it's like, hang on, we need to really edit these parts. And we started thinking, and because it was quite an organic, unplanned thing that was meant to be quite small, the kind of questions that started coming up that we were discussing, also based off conversations I had been having with Ant, all the conversations seemed to just naturally go the same way. And it was really interesting having hip hop perspective on a lot of different factors. And especially around that question that Ant first asked, actually, it was him who thought about it. because I think I'd said something about being a rapper, and the first question in the doco is based around, you know, how it is saying you're a rapper in this country, you know, and so that leads on and on and on. And so it was quite an organic conversation. But, you know, these conversations were so interesting and in depth, they became quite expansive.
Yeah.
And everyone had such interesting views. Some people are very funny, some people are very serious, some people are very funny while being serious. Some people like me are melodramatic and melancholic, you know, other people are just full of laughter. So sharing these different perspectives and personalities that come out of this country, and how just sort of, I think, insightful everybody was, and just how I think good at heart most people are.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think that was a really wonderful discovery. Like, even seeing the sensitivity within someone like 360, and sensitivity within Barker, sensitivity within myself and other artists, you know, it's like, oh, it's really cool. So it was kind of that process, you know. I'd go back, if I could go back, I would probably attack it slightly differently.
Really?
Or if I go forward, I would attack it slightly differently. So I don't know if I'd go back and change things. But
no,
we learned a lot. And it was very, very cool. Very cool process.
I definitely agree with you. I don't think you need to go back and do a thing. I think it is a brilliant think piece. I think that's how I would describe
Think
it.
piece.
A think piece.
Word.
Because again, you know, for people that are gonna watch this, and I'd love to know what the feedback has been like. Obviously, for you, you know, with commentary and stuff like that, not only from peers and from industry, but you know, hopefully from, you know, people that again want to know, maybe didn't realize that they wanted to know what hip hop thought about itself in this country. But I definitely think I would say that it's a great think piece, and I think it lands in a really nice space of, and again, hearing from you, that respect, that mutual respect that all of these artists have for each other and for their spaces in hip hop. So yeah, congratulations again. An incredible, really, really awesome title. How did you guys land on Burn Gently?
I can't give that away. You have to see the film. But yeah.
Well, it's dope. However you got to it, again, makes you think, man. Like, it really oh, what the hell? How come? What's up with that?
Yeah, it's to do with the conversations.
Fabulous. So we'll leave it at
I
that.
appreciate that. I appreciate, because at one point I was like, maybe we should change it, you know. And it's like, no, man, it's a dope idea. Stick with it, bro. And I was like, all right. So I'm glad we did.
I like that. Well, listen, all of it kind of just melds perfectly together, and yeah, it's you know, a lot of again, and I obviously doing what I do, research documentaries is the go-to, and I've watched a lot of the US hip hop those coming at you thick and fast, right? It's slick, it's very kind of, it's very Hollywood. There's a really nice authenticity, a polished, cemented authenticity about it, and I think it's one that's
it's like going to your poor friend's house, your friend that's poor but their parents cook nicely. The table, the crockery isn't fancy, but the food's good, the energy's nice.
Okay,
you
now
know,
see,
it's basically like coming to my house for dinner.
Well, that's an interesting way of describing it.
And then you go to your you got your other friend who's wealthy, who you only know because, you know, you happen to play basketball on the same team and they live on the other side of the river, and everything looks great, but there's no flavor. You know what I mean?
Seasoning.
So then you get, of course, you know, a Questlove where it's both things combined, and the way that gentleman works is amazing. We would love to be able to work on that level financially, but with what we had to work with, yeah, I think working completely independently, completely off grants, you know, Creative Vic, Australia Council, and so on. Like, we were very lucky to get the grants we did, because we couldn't have done it. And it's not like money went into our pockets; it went to getting the project done, clearing the music, clearing the samples. We were like, oh, cool. And then it's suddenly like, oh, publishing companies are going to want this, this, this. So suddenly we were actually faced with a very realistic fact that we were just going to have a music documentary with no music in it, or create an entire score that related nothing to any of the stories we were telling. But thankfully, again, you know, grant applications. I know Ant and Tina got really good at it. I helped a little, but it's not my forte.
Yeah.
We got a
That's a
couple
whole other
things that
animal.
allowed us,
Yeah.
that allowed us to pay for these things because, we couldn't have. So we're very, very grateful
Yeah.
for being able to do what we could at all.
Look, hats off to all of you for it. It's again, it's something that we're all very proud of, and you guys definitely should be incredibly proud of it. What is the feedback been like, Nfa, like from from the industry, from peers? What's that feedback been like for you since it's released?
So we had the Melbourne screening, was the first screening, and I'll be honest, I was extremely nervous.
Mm.
I knew I liked it. I knew there were things I wanted to be better in it. I knew things weren't exactly perfect, just like most albums ever made. It's like, and so I had that sense, and we all did because we're not perfect at this. But I was nervous, and I thought, oh, maybe 8 people will come, whatever. But it was packed. It was packed out. A lot of the artists came through. People I had no idea about came through. Just people who love the culture. It was great to have the team from Media Arts Lawyers there who helped us with getting the clearances done on the music, and just it was a real family vibe, and people really were reacting. There was a lot of laughter at the jokes that I'd got used to, like, oh, that was funny. Yeah, Seth is funny, isn't he? So essentially, so a lot of laughter, a lot of ahs and feelings. I was like, are they just being nice? Like, what is this?
Yeah. See,
but
think piece. It was a think piece.
Yeah, and so and it's in 2 parts. So we had a little break in the middle, and everyone's chatting about it, getting re-upping on popcorn and wine and beer and whatever, and talking. It's like, hey, we've got second part coming, and this was the same actually in Sydney. Everyone was having such a good time out the front before the screening. It was just like this big catch up with people who were like, oh, I haven't seen you, for so long, and even catching up with Trey. Like, we talked, we had the interview, but I hadn't really had a chance to see us since that, or years before and after. But we connect more. So it was a really beautiful affair of people coming together, and occasionally me being like, oh damn, seeing someone like, I should have interviewed you. I needed a hush, that kind of stuff.
I was going to ask you if that happened during.
Oh, of course. And I did definitely make calls like, guys, I think we need to try and get this person in. And it's like, we can't fit it. We're taking stuff out. If we go here, then we have to go here. So I'm like, all right. But still, people who I definitely know probably felt a little let down for not being a part of it, came through and were like, yo, respect. And then after watching it, the amount of applause, the response, the feedback, even the people who felt were like, yo, it was wicked, so this is wicked, so that was beautiful. I went from being nervous to just amazed, and people just being so happy. There are other people who've got loads of awesome footage who have thought about making docos for years, and just I'll get around to it. We're like, I got to make mine now, I got to do it. So seeing people inspired, that's a major thing for me, is even as an MC doing a show and having other people like, yo, I'm going to finish that record I started, So it's been a very nice circle, been a cipher of energy, really good responses and feedback. The reviews and write-ups have been great. I mean, we didn't pay anyone to write nice things about us. That's just what happens. So
listen, when you create with with the right intention and with integrity, you don't need to pay people to say nice things about you, man. It's felt, right? And if it lands where it was meant to land, which I believe it has, more power to you. Like, seriously. And that's amazing to hear you say that, because it's like there's such a huge vulnerability with anything that you create, and you're sharing it with the world when it's your own. But when you're at the helm of other people's narrative as well, right? Because that was a collection of other people's their relationship with hip hop here in Australia, and to package it in a way that it's going to land in the laps of everyone watching, whether they were for it or against it or had feelings, for that end result to be, oh man, this is amazing, inspiring. That's it. That's all that you want. That's the takeaway.
Yeah, and I think one of my other like concerns is just I didn't want to let down anyone we had interviewed with them feeling like it wasn't up to scratch or they didn't look good or whatever. And I thought everyone was very impressive and very strong, and I was very very happy with everybody's contribution.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
So will there be a follow-up, or are you going to take a breather and...
We will see about it. I mean, we still have a lot of like, what do you call when they call the editor's room and all the footage on the floor as
Yes,
such.
like the
There's a
blooper
lot
stuff.
of stuff we'd like to just start sharing and rolling out.
Yeah.
We have a few more screenings around the country, and then it will be I think there's a music festival that's interested in screening some of it, or a excuse me, a shortened version, which is cool. Got a few universities wanting to have it screened and show it, and then I believe a network is going to be taking it on later this year for a while, and
Yes.
do what we can. We can only do so much with the licenses we can get, but yeah, it's awesome. It feels wonderful to have completed this and made something that's a part of legacy in Australian music.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what it's all about. And also releasing it, in the 50th anniversary of hip hop this year. And, obviously, with, here in Sydney with, 4E Sydney, obviously, helping to launch that for you guys, all in conjunction with the 50th anniversary of hip hop. I mean, it brings it back to that initial sort of question with all of us that are in this industry, in this community. What does hip hop mean to us? Why are we still here all these years later? I mean, you yourself, I did use the words pioneer earlier. I did use the words legend, because to me, when I hear your name, or I see your name coming up in spaces, well, that's what you occupy for my time in this hip hop community. But how do you describe your journey so far? Because you've had such an incredible one to this point.
I appreciate it. I feel like my journey's been disjointed,
Yeah.
but consistently moving. It's been difficult, Peril from 1200 says a line in the doco. He says, how can you be the first and be supported? And so often when you're ahead of the curve on things or coming up with ideas and trying to do them, people don't get them, and you do it, and then someone else goes, and then they move on your ideas and get the finance and support. And
Yes.
I've kind of constantly been that person who creates and then watches everybody move on and sort of gets, and it's okay. It's just part of it. Like, it's just a money thing. It's finance. So I've never really had the finance to push things the way I'd like to have the time to just keep making records, because I just have to work and so on, but I feel very blessed to be part of it. Even when I see new artists coming up, I don't have any ownership over anything they've done, but I feel part of their journey. As even if I haven't inspired them, I've helped inspire things that reach them, and they're currently inspiring me because I haven't stopped. I'm still creating. I can't stop creating. It's a bit of a problem for me, in that even when I try to quit, I can't. It's not a choice. I'm
smiling because I know the pain.
I'm subject to this condition of being an artist, and thankfully I have a family who understands that. So I look at the journey. I'm like, well, I could have sat here and done that, and if this turn at Albuquerque had happened, maybe this would have happened. So, but it's not all that simple, which makes you have to stop and actually marvel at artists who can consistently keep it moving. Whether it's like, I know he's the best in the world at it, but if you look at, say, Jay-Z, he consistently keeps going. There are UK artists who I love who would be legendary for 10 years maybe. That's amazing, but they don't necessarily keep it moving. So even when I look at groups like the Hoods, it's like they just keep it moving. And I feel like I've kept it moving, but I can't necessarily reach audiences the same. But so I marvel at that, the consistent success and roll on. I just find those few very rare artists and groups special, and I applaud it. But as a creative, I'm just constantly trying to better myself. I feel like I'm easily the best I've ever been now. The new Cool Out Sun album, or the last Cool Out Sun album I did, I felt was like, oh no, this is the best record I've done. And now I've written this new one. I'm like, oh, this one might be better. So it's just constantly going. You know, I say to people, there are people who spend a lot of money playing golf every week. Every week, they're always buying gear. They days out there doing rounds, and they have no intention of being professionals, or would love to be, but just don't have it. They just don't. The money they spend on that, the money people spend gaming, but they're never going to be professional gamers.
Not at all.
But they love it. The time, for me, it's making music, hanging with my mate, my best mate, making music.
Yeah.
So I hang out with him when we can, we make music, and it's like a mental, emotional, social health and creative exercise that leads to the madness of live performance, which I don't even understand, but it's the only way I can connect. I'm not very good at standing in a room. So, you know, it's very much a constant giving. You know, hip hop, the inventors and originators of hip hop, and even those predating what we call hip hop, who created hip hop through their work, all the way back to the Jubilaires and so on before that. They gave me so much, like KRS-One or Chuck D talking about, you know, hard, crazy, like motivational sort of lyrics, and saying things that you wouldn't dare say, like saying, like when Chuck said Elvis, he was nothing but a racist, basically. I was like, you can't, you know, as a kid, but hearing the audacity to say it and be so strong in their stance, and hearing people be like, I'm so dope, I'm so fresh, yo, and, you know, get your shit together type lyrics. And, you know, that stuff really empowered me as a kid to have direction, especially as a young African Australian kid, with no one like me around. That became a very central axis. And so I always remember KRS-One and other artists talking in interviews saying, you know, I want to hear what you have to say. Really making that turn to not feeling like I needed to put on an accent, whether it be American or British or an Australian accent, because I don't really have one. I don't really have any accent. I was just sort of in between. But that sense of, okay, what can I offer back to hip hop? For me, this whole music career has been a journey of trying to give back to hip hop. Even this documentary is a gift back to hip hop. Interviewing this conversation is a gift back, however I can. It's never really to receive. Even the music I make, it's to give back, so that if KRS-One or Busta Rhymes or whoever, Queen Latifah, hears it, they'll be like, oh, I hear you. I see what you're doing. Thank you. You know, so that's always been the journey and destination for me. It's never really been to receive, it's to give.
That's your journey has definitely been one of servitude, because again, like you've packaged it again, you are always giving back, but you really hit some, well, you what you said earlier really hit differently, because it's you know, about how do you, you know, be the first and get support. And even though you and I aren't on the same sort of playing field, it's been a question I've asked myself for many years. Obviously, with the amount of years I've been in this industry, on the behind the scenes, you know, the interviewing and the writing and the radio stuff, right? It is. Thank you for being able to articulate it better than I probably, to get it out of my brain. I have these conversations with my husband all the time, and he's like, "Do you not see what you've done? Do you not see what you've contributed? You know, when you don't see it, you just keep going, and you keep sort of pushing on, but you have to stop sometimes and kind of ask the question, you know, and have that conversation, because I think it is incredibly important for you to realize just how inspiring and how necessary your role is, it has been, and continues to be. And I think even beyond this documentary, your music, it continues to add to that canvas. So yeah, man, thank you. Like that really hit differently. That was some honesty that I wasn't ready to hear, but I'm really glad I heard it.
It's the one thing I often wish is that I'd had the gumption or audacity to believe everything I wanted to do was actually possible and realistic, rather than thinking, but that's not possible. Come on now, like as if, and then because often I actually found myself in environments where maybe the opportunities could have been had, but I was just like, yeah, but come on, I'm just
Yeah.
versus, yo, yeah, what,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I guess, growing up in Australia, it's hard to get that sense of, excuse me, move, I'm
Yeah.
here now,
Yeah.
which has taken me years. But what I love is because, there was no one around who could say it. And it was hard to believe them if they said it, whereas maybe if I'd grown up in London where all my African family live, I might have been a
Yes.
lot more like that. Like, what,
Yes.
versus, yeah, do you mind if I kick a few bars? What,
Yeah.
So, but it is just timing and circumstance. And what I love is I'm seeing a lot of artists coming through these days who just have that. Sometimes it's annoying, I think, for me when I watch people that I feel are a bit too expecting.
Mm-hmm.
But when I see them having that, no, I have every right and I can do this and I'm going to. And they take the steps and they put the work in and they're building their skills and
Yeah.
understanding the journey isn't easy and it isn't immediately rewarding if you're only chasing rewards.
Mm.
Seeing those few people coming through and like actually getting the support and the outcomes,
Yeah.
I'm loving it. I'm loving seeing that.
But isn't it a fine line though between the audacity and the expectation, right? There's a fine line, and bravado, I think, because obviously all of those things can fit very neatly into that kind of uh, performance. Can we say that sort of personal performance? I hear what you're saying, but I totally understand that expectation when you have no idea what this has been built on and the amount of rooms that people, like probably like you and I in our different spaces have been quiet when we probably shouldn't have been, or wanted to kind of come out bombastic, but it wasn't what was done, or it wasn't kind of the way
or even if you wanted to, you need a couple people to make a scrum, no matter how hard you push, you sometimes need more than one. No matter how hard you're pushing, you just can't.
No,
And so what did you do? It's like, well, I kicked the door so much that someone else could actually kick it in, but it looks like I didn't do anything, so and that's often the case. That's why I'm always very appreciative. There are certain people even in the Melbourne music scene that people don't know, and when I see them, I'm always very thankful because I know they played venues, especially certain African artists that were out here, and there were a couple of African Americans out here as well, but definitely a couple of African artists that were out here who stayed and lived, who definitely softened certain venue owners, that made funk venues available to be, hip hop available to be. There'd be one or two, and that one or two turned into 10 or 20 to 100, 200, and so on. But, so I'm very thankful not only to those few artists who were alone and representing, but also those few venues who were taking those pushes.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, look, I could talk to you forever, but I know, time, it's crazy how time just pushes on. Before we sort of round off, just, musically for you right now, we obviously spoke about what you're doing and, giving back, constantly inspiring us and a legion of other, sort of newcomers to our hip hop. But who's inspiring you at the moment musically? What are you listening to? What do you get your kicks?
There are certain artists coming up, a lot of really good instrumental artists. There's a guy in my mind whose name has just eluded me right now. I'm a bit embarrassed. He's a drummer. The music he makes with his crew, and this keyboard player, Alpha Mist from UK. Like I'm really loving the musicianship I'm hearing from certain places in the world.
Yeah.
But funnily, the group that probably had quite an effect on me as a 19-year-old was a group called Black Star. And they're still the same people inspiring me today, because they're only a little bit older than me. Between them and their luminary with Dave Chappelle, and the way they do things, the way they talk, their insightfulness, the music they make, the time they take, and just their approach. I find that inspiring. I also am extremely inspired, not necessarily by music of how to explain it. Yeah, the music and lyricism, but the energy and push certain artists have. Like when I put on my Titats by Baka, I'm in a mood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm without being conceited, I'm a really good lyricist.
Yeah.
But I could not have written that because I couldn't ever be in her position, and I wouldn't have thought to approach it the way she does it.
Yes.
Even if I tried to imagine myself as a woman, right? Yes. I sit and think, you know, but I'm like, so I hear that, and it's like I have to dig deeper.
Yeah.
You know, I get inspired by that. I get inspired by meeting new people that I didn't know were around that should have been friends for years, like ourselves, for example, right now. So there's certain music, but I always find myself connecting back, researching more about the past, learning about Tasso and Tassaran rhyme culture from Senegal that predates colonial Africa.
Wow.
And the fact that, like, you know, Africans in America existing well before Columbus ever got there. And this whole notion of Tasso may have already been there, or even if it did come over on the slave ships, this whole cycle of hip hop, like thinking about that and trying to connect in and understand my culture, my actual language and cultural approach more, and writing that into my songs versus being like, oh, am I allowed to do that? I mean, I grew up out here. I didn't really, like, no, fuck that. It's mine. I'm going to talk about it. And if I can only sing my language in song because I can only learn phrases at a time because I didn't get to grow up with it, then so be it. And so digging deeper, and hip hop's always talks about the cipher, you know? And so that circle of going back, going forward and passing around is, it's hard not to be inspired if you're on that sort of vibration.
Absolutely. Oh man, it just, even how you've explained it all, like I think you've pretty much laid out your next 5-year plan, Nfa. I don't know. Between me and you manifesting it, putting it out there. I see other works coming in. There's always art. Are you an artistic person? You could always do some kind of think piece, album, art. Listen, there's lots of things going on.
Yeah, there is lots of things, definitely. The main thing right now, post Burn Gently documentary, is the new Cool Out Sun album. I was actually sitting over the bay. It was like glass, flat and beautiful today, and the sun was up. It was just stunning. I was sitting on these rocks, the Sensible J, who I work with, just playing the album in an order sequence that I saw it sounding good in. And he was like, I'm feeling that. And it was just cool to hear the album and go, okay, this is where we need to add the embellishments and so on. But just to feel that, and now there's a sense to start moving forward with the Cool Out Sun record. There are other creative projects I've got in mind as well that I sort of feel like I'm sort of pivoting, turning a corner of energy vamp up, you know, and
I can feel
that
it.
other side of myself that's very like, get out of my way, it's time. That guy's been chilling for quite a while, and I feel him or her coming up who's like, let's go.
They're brewing. Something is brewing within, and it's about time that it came out. I mean, look, I never knew that was sort of what you were kind of battling a little bit, because again, like I said, it's something that's resonated with me, with my own internal, you know, that sort of conversation with no, not right now, or you constantly kicking open doors and other people are able to walk in, and you're like, that's cool, that's great, but I've got stuff to say, I've got things that are necessary to come out. And there's, listen, this Burn Gently, Cool Out Sun, there's a lot that I think we want to hear from you, and we deserve to hear from you. So please put it out. Don't hold back anymore. You don't need to. Like, this is your space, and you've helped create so much of it with, just kind of humbly chipping away, man. Just kick in the door, wave in the 4-4. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Congratulations, and thank you for your time tonight, man. It's just been so inspiring and so enlightening. I really, really feel like I'm coming away getting to know an incredible human that has been so integral in our hip hop canvas. You've been really, really important to it, and I'm really grateful to have this time to talk to you.
I appreciate it. And big shout outs to my big brother Kabar, who started me on this journey. I wouldn't be anything without my big bro.
Absolutely. Awesome, man. Listen, best of luck with everything, and let's not be strangers. Let's touch base. And when is the album out? Let's get that. Like, is there a release date, or are we still fine tweaking?
No, there's not yet, but we're fine tweaking. We will start rolling out some promo assets. Just some cool shit we've got that we just start sharing. We'll start sharing some stuff and set things up over the next few months. And when the time's right, we will do the thing.
Oh, can't wait to hear it. All the blessings to you, man.
You too. Thank you, Maxine.
Thank you. Thank you. Anytime.
Everyone's got their own old school. I just want to say first, it's got nothing to do with age. You can be like 19 now, and your old school might be Kendrick Lamar in years to come. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It just so happens mine goes back 35 years.
Hip-hop music always was the source of education for me. Hip-hop music was the only thing that ever opened my eyes to perhaps a different alternative view of Australia.
The way I see it is like, if we're documenting human experience, I need to see everything. But I need to see it from a place where I'm not necessarily being influenced.
Hip-hop taught me everything about English, history. That all spawned from hip-hop, not from schooling.
I just wanted to be known as a dope, not necessarily a rapper, but just a dope artist, pretty much.
We don't play rap crap. I mean, that's what we're up against. That's how it was.
When we got into it, there was no concept of like ever being in a position where we could earn money from it.
Triple J is not this evil, all-controlling entity that that sits there and decides, oh, we're going to make or break artists.
Sampa the Great did her second ever show standing right here. It was incredible.
Let me get that.
Nobody's telling them about what's happening. The first thing you get is a way to assimilate. This is how you say thongs. This is how you say Max. It's like, this is what you're teaching me about a country. A list of how people say things. You're not teaching me about the country.
When I first came out and released music, there were a couple of blogs and things like that would write up and just sort of call me a rapper. But, I'm not sure if that was because of the music I was doing or if it was because of the colour of my skin.
Australian hip-hop is not racist. Australia is racist. And Australian hip-hop is just Australian.
Hip-hop doesn't make you black. A culture can't make you black. You black because of your blood or your ancestors, whatever happened.
At that point, I guess I began to really deconstruct everything that the so-called dominant paradigm had placed upon us.
Recovery is not easy. I've been in and out of 3 different rehabs. I've been in and out of different psych wards, in and out of prison, in and out of juvenile detention before I kind of got sick of myself,
No one really knew what happened when I had that little overdose and the tour got cancelled and stuff like that. No one knew why, no one knew what happened.
Burn Down the Parliament was taken literally, and there were calls made and papers thrown around, I think.
To be able to get up and do this shit every day is like, it's a blessing, man. It's like...
It straight up saved our life.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a story that you've never heard about that day.
Bye. Where was I?